this unit will give you a better understanding of issuing orders, giving warnings, summary conviction offenses, where your authority to issue a summary offense ticket information, or SOTI, comes from, and how to prepare, serve, and process a SOTI. As we've said, your main goal as a bylaw enforcement officer is to have the people of your community cooperate with the bylaws and territorial acts that you enforce. Nevertheless, there are times when you will need to serve someone an order or a ticket for a breach of a municipal bylaw or a Dog Act, Motor Vehicles Act, or an All-Terrain Vehicles Act offense. In Unit 1, when we talked about your powers, we said that you have the authority to issue orders. An order is a way to get people to cooperate with bylaws without having to go to court. The order should be in writing. If, for example, your community had an unsightly appearance of land bylaw, and there was a property in your community which had a decaying building on it, junk cars, and large amounts of garbage, issuing an order in writing would be a way to force the owner of the property to clean it up. A sample of an order is included under the supplemental materials menu item. But what if you're out on patrol and you spot 3 teenagers riding on a quad? First of all, that's a breach of one of the territorial acts. The All-Terrain Vehicles Act states that no more than 2 people are allowed to ride on a special all-terrain vehicle, which is an all-terrain vehicle with 3 or 4 wheels at one time. Again, your goal is to get people in your community to cooperate with the bylaws and territorial acts you enforce. To do this, there are times when you will use a verbal warning to let people know you are aware they are breaking the law, but you do not want to take them to court. Warnings are a good public relations tool and can serve to stop people from breaking the law in the future. If this was the first time you've ever seen this group of teenagers breaking the law, it might be a good time to give them a warning instead of a ticket. To give this offender a warning, first you will need to get the quad to pull over. Depending on the situation, there are many different methods you can use to stop someone. In this case, a good approach would be to drive up until you are right behind the quad and then activate your car's lights and siren, also known as your emergency equipment. If your patrol car has a loudspeaker or PA system, use this to ask them to pull over. In the case of ATVs, you do not want to give any advanced warning, as the driver will often speed up and drive away before you get the chance to identify the driver and passengers and serve them the warning or ticket. Once they are stopped, approach the vehicle, identify yourself as a bylaw officer, and state your name and department. Then ask the driver to turn off the quad and remove the key from the ignition. Next, have all of the passengers and driver remove their helmets. This is so that you can identify them before you get further into the process in case they decide to drive away at any point. Then have everyone step away from the ATV. Next, explain why you are stopping them. Here you can state the bylaw number if you know it, or explain the law itself. Then take the driver's information, his or her name, date of birth, and license and registration. It's a good idea to ID the other passengers as well, so you can record the most accurate information possible about the offense in your notes. If your community has an informational brochure about the requirements for ATVs, you may wish to give them a copy. Then, if you still feel like a warning would be appropriate, explain that this time you will let them go with a warning. Make sure to have the other passengers get off the machine before you allow the driver to leave. But what if, the next week, you run into the same group of kids on the quad? You've already given them a warning about this law, and they're consciously breaking it again. This time, you really have no choice but to issue them a ticket. The tickets you will be using on the job are called Summary Offense Ticket Informations, or SOTIs. They can be issued for a breach of most bylaws and territorial acts. SOTIs are used by any police officer or bylaw officer to charge someone of a summary conviction offense in every territory and province in Canada. A summary conviction offense is the type of offense bylaw officers have to be concerned with. All bylaw, Motor Vehicles Act, or All-Terrain Vehicles Act offenses are summary conviction. Your authority to issue a SOTI is given in the Cities, Towns and Villages Act under Section 152, subsection 2, in the Hamlets Act under Section 154, subsection 2, in the Charter Communities Act under Section 156, subsection 2, and in the ch12 Community Government Act under Section 148, subsection 2. These sections explain that a person who is guilty of an offense under a bylaw can be made to pay a specific fine or go to jail under summary conviction. So this time, you've decided to give the driver of the quad a ticket. The process of giving someone a ticket is almost the same as giving a warning. First, you stop the vehicle. Then you approach the vehicle, identify yourself, explain the offense, and take the driver's information. The difference is, this time the driver will be made to pay a fine or go to court. Before you can begin to fill out a SOTI, you're going to need all of the information. What do you already know about this situation? You know that this offense is a breach of the All-Terrain Vehicles Act. You also know that a quad is defined as a special all-terrain vehicle. These are important details, but they aren't enough to issue a ticket. For motor vehicles, all-terrain vehicles, and Dog Act offenses, there are three main pieces of information you will need to fill out the top half of a SOTI. You need the charging section, which is the section of the Act or bylaw that the charge comes from, the description of the offense, and the fine amount. For municipal bylaw offenses, you will also need the bylaw number. To find this information, refer to your fine schedules. With time, you may get to know many of the bylaws and territorial offenses by heart, but you should still carry the fine schedules with you. Within the Summary Conviction Procedures Regulations, you will find Schedule A. This schedule lists the fines for all-terrain vehicle and Motor Vehicles Act offenses, as well as many other summary conviction offenses. Most officers choose to carry only the fine schedule pages they need. You will also need to carry fine schedules for your municipal bylaw offenses. If there is any information missing from any of your fine schedules, you should track down the missing info and fill it in prior to going on duty. When you're looking at Schedule A of the Summary Conviction Procedures Regulations to find the information you need, first locate the section in question. In this case, it's Part 1, All-Terrain Vehicles Act. Under the last column, you will find a general description of the offense. In this case, it is operation of special all-terrain vehicle with more than 2 persons. The second column is the provision contravened. This is the charging section. This number corresponds with the section of the Act in question. In this case, if you were to go to Section 9.05 of the All-Terrain Vehicles Act, you would find the law that says, "No person shall operate or ride on a special all-terrain vehicle on a highway where there are more than 2 persons on the vehicle." The third column of Schedule A shows you the amount of the fine. The fine for this offense is $75. The fourth column is the surcharge. The victim's crime surcharge is a fee that is collected on all territorial offense charges and is used to assist victim-related projects. In the Victims of Crimes Act, it states that every person other than a young person who is convicted of an offense under an enactment shall pay a surcharge. The surcharge can be no more than 15% of the fine. For this offense, the surcharge is $11. The fifth column is the specified penalty, which is the total amount the person accused of committing the crime, has to pay. The specified penalty is the total of the fine and the surcharge. In this case, it is $86. Another thing to consider in this particular case is the age of the accused. If the driver of the ATV appears to be over the age of 12, but under 18, he or she is defined as a young person in the Youth Justice Act. For this example, we'll say the driver is 16 and therefore a young person. Now that you have found a general description of the offense, the charging section, the fine amount, and you know that the accused is a young person, you're ready to fill out a SOTI. The SOTI is 5 pages in total. They are all attached. The first page of the SOTI is the information. This is where you fill in all the information about the offense. The next 4 pages, which are the summons, the report of conviction, the police report, and the notice to parent, are carbon copies of the first page. That way you won't have to waste time filling in every page individually. On the information, fill in the date, the name of the community, and the time the offense was committed. Then print out the full name of the accused, last name first, followed by first name and middle name, and finally the accused's complete address. The next section is where you indicate what type of offense was committed. In this case, you would tick off the box next to Other and write in All-Terrain Vehicles Act in the space provided. If the driver had committed a Motor Vehicles Act offense, you would tick off the box next to the Motor Vehicles Act. And if they had committed a municipal bylaw offense, you would tick off the box next to Municipal Bylaw and write out the bylaw number in the space provided. Because this isn't a speeding violation, you can ignore the section on speed limit and recorded speed. If you were writing a speeding ticket, this is where you would record that information. Then where it says Section, write in the charging section. In this case, it is 9.05, which refers to Section 9.05 of the All-Terrain Vehicles Act. Where it says Description of Offense, write a simple explanation of what happened. You can use the description from this schedule or just write a simple explanation of the offense. In the small box to the right, fill in the fine amount, which is $75. Then there's the surcharge. As we said earlier, every person except for a young person has to pay the surcharge. Because this person is 16, you would place a 0 on that line. Therefore, under specified penalty, you would write $75. If the accused was an adult, the specified penalty would be the total of the fine amount and the $11 surcharge, which would be $86. Leave the next section, where there is a place for the signature of the informant peace officer, blank. This will be filled in afterwards at the court registry. The red box below is where you mark down which type of court the accused must appear in. We will talk more about court and court procedures in Unit 13. For this offense, tick off the box next to Youth Justice Court. You will either use this box or the Justice of the Peace Court box for all of the SOTIs you write. Then fill in the location of the court and the accused's court date and time. There is a schedule online at www.nwtcourts.ca where the available court dates are listed. The court requires you to leave a minimum of 30 days between the date the offense was committed and the date of the court appearance. A good technique is to check the schedule online before you go out on patrol and make a note of the first available court date after the 30-day period so that you're always prepared to fill out a SOTI. Under the red box, there is a paragraph on the specified penalty. In most cases, you will tick off this box. Ticking off the box next to specified penalty gives the accused 2 options. They can plead guilty by signing the form on the back of the summons, which is the second page of the SOTI, and return it with the specified penalty to the address that you indicate before their court date, or go to court. In rare cases, you might not use this box. For example, within the Motor Vehicles Act, there are certain offenses which do not have fines associated with them. Failure to carry a driver's license is one example of this. Because there is no fine, you would not tick off specified penalty. And you would simply write court in the box for the fine amount. The same goes for a situation when the officer wants to draw attention to an offense that is being committed on an ongoing basis and thinks it would be beneficial to bring it up in court to push for an increased fine. Another instance is in the case of an aggravating circumstance where the officer does not believe that the fine listed is adequate for the severity of the offense committed. An example of this might be if an officer tried to get a vehicle to pull over and the driver repeatedly ignored the officer and kept on speeding. The officer might want to take the driver to court to ask for an increased fine. In any case, you need a valid reason to push a case to court. Next, you would tick off the box next to young person, because the accused is a young person in this case. If the accused is not a young person, do not tick off this box. After that, fill in the information about the vehicle and vehicle operator, including their birth date, gender, license expiry date, license number and class, the manufacturer, make, model, year and color of the vehicle, the plate number, the territory, the year on the plate, the owner of the vehicle's name, and the driver's address. The second page of the SOTI is the summons. This is the copy you give to the accused after you have filled out the information. It is a carbon copy of the information. The back of the summons is the plea of guilty form. As we mentioned, this is the form that the accused fills out if they want to plead guilty to the offense and pay the specified penalty out of court. To complete the process of serving the ticket, tear the summons from the rest of the SOTI and give it to the accused. The delivery of the ticket is considered personal service of the summons on that person. At this point, you should restate the reason you pulled them over and why they are being served the ticket. You also need to explain the next steps to the accused. They need to understand that if they do not pay their fine by the due date on their ticket, or they fail to show up in court on their court date, they may be convicted of the offense without a hearing. A judge might also issue a warrant for their arrest. It is your duty under the Summary Conviction Procedures Act to explain this to the accused upon serving them the ticket. In this case, because you are dealing with a young person, you also have a duty under the Youth Justice Act to tell the accused that they have the right to a lawyer. The Summary Conviction Procedures Act also says that if a summons has been issued to a young person, the officer should make reasonable efforts to serve the notice to parent on the young person's parent or legal guardian. The notice to parent is the 5th page of the SOTI. It is also a carbon copy of the information. In this case, you would have to locate the parent or legal guardian of the accused and give them the notice to parent. In the case of a parking violation, you can either deliver the summons to the owner of the vehicle or to the vehicle itself, as the case may be. Once the summons and the notice to parent in this case have been torn out and delivered, you keep the rest of the SOTI intact. Just because you've delivered the ticket to the accused does not mean you are finished dealing with this offense. There is more that needs to be done for the SOTI to be considered complete, and it all needs to get done well before the court date. At the end of your day, bring the rest of the SOTI back to the office. First, fill out the affidavit of service on the back of the information. For this offense, you would fill in both the affidavit of service and the affidavit of service on a parent of the young person. This is a written oath that you served the ticket to the person named on the ticket, and you followed the correct procedure. It will be witnessed by a Commissioner of Oaths or a local RCMP. The rest of the SOTI, which is the information, the report of conviction, and the police report, goes to the court registry. At the court registry, the officer charging the accused, which is usually the same officer who issued the ticket, will swear or affirm before a justice of the peace that all of the information on the face of the ticket is true and correct. Then the charging officer will sign the front of the information where it says Informant Peace Officer Signature. The justice of the peace will then sign and witness that signature. Once you get the justice of the peace's signature, the SOTI is fully filled out. He or she will remove the police report copy and give it to you to keep for your records. The last two pieces, the information and the report of conviction, stay with the court. Something to consider when issuing tickets is that it's very important to keep good records. The Cities, Towns and Villages Act, the Hamlets Act, the Charter Communities Act, and the ch12 Community Government Act state that the SAO must keep records of the tickets issued, the payments of fines, and the details about court appearances. But you also need to take the responsibility of making sure this is done. That's the majority of what you need to know about tickets and summons preparation. If you have further questions, don't hesitate to ask the RCMP, your SAO, or your local MACA representative for more information.